Do you have any idea the lack of research that was done on those products?
Joe Biden says that it's safe and effective, but like he didn't know.
There's no proof. I mean, none of that stuff was safe and effective. People wanted it. Who gave it to them? It's like, all right, you know what? Cancer patient's going to die anyway. I'm sure somebody's going to get sued for that stuff eventually.
In a breaking new video released by O'Keefe Media Group, the lead regulatory scientist for Johnson & Johnson admits openly there that the Johnson & Johnson bypassed standard safety protocols in developing its COVID-19 vaccine, which he states is not safe and effective. Listen.
You know, they're like, Joe Biden says that it's safe and effective, but like he didn't know.
There's no proof. I mean, none of that stuff was safe and effective. We didn't do the typical test. Like the typical process, that's why it takes so long to get a product on market. The typical process is all this clinical trial testing and stuff in a small population. This was just, let's test it on some, lab models, analyze and see if it works and stuff like that, and just throw it to the wind and see what happens.
The lead scientist named Jonathan Rice blames the government and Operation Warp Speed along with public demand for Johnson & Johnson's rush job.
It was pretty much the government kind of made a deal with pharmaceutical companies and kind of pressured the pharmaceutical companies, because we're not going to say no to the help, like the government. Like the government's like, yo, these three big ass companies, we need help. We need to figure this out. You're solving this problem.
Is that Operation Warp Speed?
I mean, we basically just had a race to figure out who could solve it best. Like, people wanted it. Who gave it to them?
Now, this revealing undercover report coincides with a Senate hearing today being held by Ron Johnson, listening to the voices of victims of COVID vaccine injured people being held at 3 p.m. Eastern today on the Hill. Our own Allison Steinberg is going to try to get to that. It's a very busy day in D.C., and I'm sure Christy Lee will have more on that very important hearing held by Senator Ron Johnson in her 3 p.m. hour of D.C. Dispatch. In the meantime, speaking of Allison Steinberg, she's on the Hill today, where parents who were silenced, who were targeted by the Biden DOJ, got their moment to share their stories in an event organized by Kelly Walker, and that included our good friend Leah Hoops, the co-author of The Parallel Election. You had Congressman Andy Biggs speaking out in support of these parents. And joining us now from the Hill, immediately following this press conference that just wrapped up moments ago, is Allison Steinberg. She's joined by Kelly Walker, one of the organizers of this event. You know what? I'm so glad, Allison. It seems like this press conference is getting a lot of attention. I've seen it being mentioned several different places. Finally, the voices of these parents who were targeted by the Biden Department of Justice, they were harassed, are finally getting their day to be heard. Tell us about today's press conference. And also, we have Mr. Kelly Walker with us, which we're so pleased to have.
Yes, Kelly Walker is here with us today. It's a pleasure to have him here. He really spearheaded the press conference that we just attended today. There was a great group of parents who all were here in support of fighting back against the corrupt government that truly was weaponized against them during the COVID scamdemic. They bound together and each told their stories, so many impactful stories that take you back to that time when the tyranny was just explosive. You couldn't even leave your house without a mask or you might be arrested, as we heard from one of the parents today. It's disgusting. It's despicable what these people have been through, and now it's time to get justice. I'm here with Kelly Walker, who's really spearheaded this movement and has never given up on the fight. Yep. Kelly, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your continued fight. Tell us more about why you guys got here.
Thank you, Allison. Well, I am one of the parents who was severely targeted. My family was affected. We've basically lost everything. And Sam Sorbo and I have worked for the last month to compile a dossier of parents who were targeted by Merrick Garland and Joe Biden's DOJ. And what I've discovered is that stories like mine are prevalent across the nation. So I thought instead of going to the courts and battling this, I'm going to go straight to Washington, D.C. I'm going to tell my story, but also give these parents a chance to tell their story. So what we're seeing today is one step in a process, but it's also a culmination of about 4 years of work because, you know, they tried to silence me as a parent, and that was a mistake because they only made me louder. Sam Sorbo's been great. Andy Ogles sponsored this. Unfortunately, his flight was canceled. Andy Biggs stepped in. We have Moms for Liberty here, Moms for America, Mom Army, Dad Army, a whole lot of great people. So Sam and I also got to meet with Ed Martin, director of the Weaponization Working Group, and Vince Haley, Trump's domestic policy advisor, and they were very, very supportive. So we're calling on President Trump respectfully to issue an executive order. We have one drafted with some key provisions. One of the main things we need, Allison, is restitution for these parents, not reparations, not some general vague notion, but very specifically, parents have lost homes, they've lost jobs, they've incurred legal fees, and we need to restore them to the level of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness that they had before their own government went to war against them. So this, I'm going to release the dossier redacted version later today, and you'll get to read some of these stories for yourself. And some of the parents, I asked, do you want your name redacted? Do you want details redacted? Some of them said, absolutely not, in all caps, do not redact my story. They want to tell their stories. They're brave individuals. And I can tell you firsthand, we've had threats to our life. We had threats come in the mail to handcuff my wife and children and make me watch as they're murdered and violated. And I mean, imagine that coming to your home mailbox. I have had no criminal record. I do now. And what was that criminal record for? It was misdemeanor 3 trespassing, which was bogus to start with. But to be investigated by the FBI, 14 Tucson police officers for maybe you didn't leave a school quite as soon as we thought you should. It's absurd. And you're going to read these stories and you're going to say, I don't care what party you're in. You're going to say, how could this happen in the United States of America? We have to make sure it never happens again. And we need to restore these people. People have PTSD. We're struggling. I'm 55. My wife and I say it's like we're a newlywed couple starting over again. Our house is gone, our savings, everything. And part of that is because I have pursued this fight. I'm up here in DC. This is like my 5th time up here. I go on my own dime. Sometimes people pitch in a little, which is much appreciated. But we need to not let this die. We need to keep the momentum going. And thank you to Mike Lindell. Thank you to Lindell TV. And thank you and Emerald Robinson and the whole team for coming out today.
Yeah, it's so important to us, and it's an issue that we can never forget about. And it's frightening and alarming to me that so many people seemingly have forgotten about what we went through in just such recent history, right? It was not even 5 years ago that all of this happened, and people have just been so quick to move on with their lives. We need accountability. We need justice for all the victims, the parents who bravely and boldly stood up and refused to back down, like Kelly and so many others. If not for them, I don't know where we would be, right? We could still be under all out tyranny, but we have to continue this fight. I'm just curious, Kelly, are you confident that we will get justice here? Are you confident that we can actually hold these government officials who impose the tyranny upon us and bring to light what actually happened and actually have some appropriate punishment for that?
I'm optimistic. I'm extremely confident in President. He's shown himself to be a man of action. Sam Sorbo says he's the parent in chief. And I do believe when President Trump understands some of these stories, I'd like to talk to him because I represent de facto a lot of parents. I believe he's going to say, as he has about other things, we need to make this right. We have a number of members of Congress who are standing behind this. And I have to say, in terms of confidence, this is a huge win for the Trump administration. And it's a much needed win for the government as a whole, both parties, because people need to be shown, hey, the government is actually going to do some justice. They're going to make whole the people whose rights they are supposed to be protecting, which were taken away from them unconstitutionally. So I have confidence, and I'll say this, for me and for many of the parents and for all the speakers you saw here today, we're simply not going to take no for an answer.
Yeah.
This government has a duty to restore these people. They have a duty to make things right, to apologize, and honestly to honor them, to honor these parents because they did the right thing.
Yeah, they do have a duty. And as duly elected members of our federal government, I would expect that they're held to account appropriately. I would also like to point out that though there was a nice turnout for the presser today, parents who showed up, people who have been victims to the tyranny, and some members of the press. We now have this event going on right behind me. As you can see, this is jam-packed here. huge turnout for an event that is meant to protect illegal aliens. So you can see where the priorities lie in this country. Though we have amazing
Wow.
fighters like Kelly,
Literally
and
side by
others
side.
here,
You can't get much more of a stark contrast than that, can you, Allison? Side by
it does
side.
not get more stark.
One side
No,
protecting
it's
parents,
really
one protecting illegals who broke the law.
Yeah, more protecting
Good point.
parents and Americans, less protecting illegals. That's great. Emerald, any other questions for Kelly here, or Kelly, any last comments from you?
Yeah, we have prioritized the needs of Americans over the wants and needs of anybody and everybody else. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. We have a lot of needs from different groups that this government needs to address. This is one that's critical, and I don't care how many people show up or how few people show up. This is a matter of right and wrong. And I will say, across the nation, there are millions of parents who are watching this issue closely. And one of the reasons we don't have a lot of people here is we're not attracting lobbyists and political action groups.
Mhm.
Parents have to stay home with their kids. My kids are here. My wife didn't even know if she could come because, what do I do with the kids? But they came anyway. Here only because of donations. So the audience is watching right now. They're watching Lindell TV. They're watching live feeds because look, they have to take care of kids. They have to educate kids. They have to provide for kids. So I wouldn't necessarily, I think it's a really great point, and we should have a huge crowd here, but I wouldn't necessarily take the size of the crowd as an indication of the support base. It's massive.
Yeah.
I mean, Moms for Liberty, Moms for America, Mom Army, Dad Army, they came, and combined, they represent how many millions and millions of parents. So politically, if you don't get behind this issue, it's going to be a mistake. You need to be behind this issue if you're in a public office.
Yeah, and if we don't get enough voices speaking out against it, then this is what you're going to get in the future. So now is the time. If you've been too, shy or afraid to speak up, now is the time. And there's such a great group of people spearheading this charge. So Kelly, I just want to say thank you so much for all that you do. Emerald.
And we owe the parents who did speak up such a debt of gratitude because they were really the force behind breaking the restrictions and real political change here in the United States. So we honor and we thank those parents. And look, I'm really encouraged about. I love that Kelly laid out the path forward. What we need the executive order. We need restitution so they can have restoration. Okay, I'm glad that he laid out exactly because there are specific action items that can be taken by this president. And you know what? I believe he will. I do believe he will. And it will be a huge win for his administration in the way of accountability that so many people in America are seeking. And I feel confident in hearing Kelly speak, and he named some really key names there. He said not only Ed Martin, who we know has come through on many issues in the past, he's a solid hire in the administration, especially for the weaponizations but also Vince Haley, who's the head of the Domestic Policy Council. He's a key person who can get things done. I've seen him get a lot done that he doesn't get credit for in the administration. So I am very encouraged knowing that those two people are working on this issue and how to get accountability. Allison Steinberg, thank you so much for the great reporting. I know you're going to be moving all over DC, so we'll be catching up with you throughout the day. Thanks, Allison.
Thank you so much.
And speaking of accountability, in the way of also breaking news, as the current Trump administration's Attorney General Pam Bondi struggles under the controversy of the failure to disclose the Epstein client list, the embattled Attorney General has decided to kill and give the media fresher meat. The sacrificial lamb this time is the Department of Justice's ethics advisor, who is accused of helping to prosecute the January 6th political prisoners during the Biden regime, which is, good to get rid of them. But how likely is Pam Bondi to remain in her job, considering that even Trump stalwarts like FBI Director Kash Patel and his number 2 Deputy FBI Director Dan Bongino have been hinting they'd resign if Bondi stays on as AG? Could Trump be looking for another replacement already? And could that replacement be none other than current Florida Governor Ron DeSantis? Well, I mean, honestly, probably wouldn't be the best move for DeSantis. In fact, we kind of hope Governor DeSantis continues cementing his status as the country's best governor rather than give up to lead that sinking ship that is the Trump's Department of Justice on the issue of the Epstein files. And just this week, Florida, despite having a collapsing housing market we're going to dig into later in the week, was ranked by U.S. News and World Report as having the best overall economy and education system in the country. So it makes little sense for the governor to give up such a great gig to head to Washington, D.C. and suffer under the mercurial whims of President Trump and his top advisors, especially as President Trump continues to extol the greatness, the supposed greatness of Pam Bondi as his AG. Now, Trump's previous attorney generals never got such treatment from him, and neither would Ron DeSantis. There is one reason, though, that he might abandon his cushy job in Tallahassee for the misery of the swamp. His wife, I guess he'd technically be trading one swamp for another. His wife is likely running to succeed him as Florida governor. She's pretty much telegraphed that to the world. DeSantis might trade in his job right now for the AG position if he can extract a promise that President Trump would support Casey in her bid to be Florida's next governor, especially since the current representative in Congress for Florida's 19th district, Byron Donalds, is the odds-on and honestly MAGA's favorite pick to be the next governor. And the DeSantis camp dislikes Donalds because of his decision very early on in the last campaign cycle to support President Trump's re-election over Ron DeSantis's candidacy for presidency in 2024. So setting aside the political gamemanship and looking at things objectively, which we always try to do, we do not think the governor should abandon his post in Florida to join what will be a thankless role in D.C. just to try to help his wife's candidacy to succeed him as Florida's governor. Florida's thrived under his leadership. He already made a faux pas in running against President Trump that could have tanked his political future. So it's really in his best interest to stay the rest of the term, and that's the absolute truth. So the BBB has passed. What's the way forward on actual government, cutting actual government spending? Well, the Center for Renewing America always has its finger on the pulse and great suggestions for how to rein in the massive spending from Washington, D.C. And CRA's Wade Miller joins us after the break.
Swollen limbs, joint pain, inflammation, skin aging, and cognitive decline. These are just a few of the awful side effects that you can experience due to poor blood circulation. And popping ibuprofen is not a solution to the pain. It's only temporary relief, and it's only masking the true problem, which is inflammation. Researchers are saying to add this Antarctic super nutrient to your diet. I'm talking about omega-3 fatty acids, but not just any form of omegas. These particular omega-3 fatty acids are sourced from wild-caught krill. Has been shown to support healthy blood pressure, circulation, brain health, as well as reduce inflammation, swelling, and joint pain. For a limited time, you can grab Native Path Antarctic Krill Oil for up to 66% off plus free shipping. Just go to getkrill.com/Lindell right now to get your special offer.
The White House Office of Management and Budget Director Russ Vought is still pushing for pocket rescissions to force the DOGE cuts made earlier this year to become permanent under federal law. Vought has rightly grown frustrated at the opposition from his own fellow Republicans in order to pass a law making permanent the DOGE cuts. So he's looking to a constitutional trick to reinforce them. A rescission is just the cancellation of previously appropriated funding by Congress. Both Congress and the president have the authority to propose the rescission of certain funding, albeit through different procedures. The president can do via a pocket rescission. Basically, Trump would send a budget 45 days before the end of the fiscal year, which we are approaching, leaving little time for Congress to review the proposed cuts, allowing the president to enact the rescission by default. Listen.
It's a $9 billion package because we want to see is Congress serious about that. Senator Kennedy has had some incredible floor speeches on this very issue. Is Congress serious about passing and making the DOGE cuts permanent, or are we going to have to continue to use our executive tools on that?
And here is Wade Miller for the Center for Renewing America, who will walk us more closely through how the rescission process will proceed in the waning weeks of summer and its importance for the Trump administration's policies. It's good to see you, Wade.
Thanks for having me on.
Okay, so we talked about how rescissions work, what would be the best path forward the last time you joined the Absolute Truth, but the bill had not passed then, right? The BBB had not yet passed, and we were looking down the road. We've crossed that hurdle. The president's budget is, budget bill is passed. Where your your former colleague at the Center for Renewing America, who's now the OMB director again, Russ Vought, is talking about the possibility of a regular rescission package still passing, but that would involve Congress actually voting on it and passing it. How likely is that to happen? Or are you still suggesting that the best way forward would be to get into August, because we're almost there, and do it via pocket rescission?
Well, that's a great question. So it is extremely important that this current rescissions bill pass in full. Now, I'm confident that something will pass. They need to pass all of it because there's vital components of this that go to fund a lot of the weaponization of various entities throughout the federal government, through USAID, wokeness through NPR and PBS that can sustain themselves now and no longer need financial assistance from the American taxpayer. But the reason that the rescissions package needs to pass in full is because if it fails, you cannot use a pocket rescission on it later. We would have to wait until next year to go through this process again if they don't get at it through appropriations. So that's why this specific rescissions bill is important. We do need maximum pressure and support of those who are attempting to pass this thing in full. But for whatever doesn't pass, then the White House, if they choose to, the President Trump, he could use impoundment authority on the back end. They could use reprogramming authority, but they could not use a pocket rescission. Now, there is a big pocket of money out there still. Most of the DOGE cuts, which are still being mostly withheld or deferred, that you could use pocket rescissions on. And I'm hoping to see that action being taken once we get into mid-August, early September. I know that some members of Congress don't like this, but I think this gets to a bigger problem, which is in the 70s, the Congress basically, I think, unconstitutionally tried to end the ability of the president to use impoundment authority. This is what we got out of statute was there's this new rescissions process, which hasn't been used a lot, but it is a statutory power, as are pocket rescissions, a statutory power in the language. And now they want to further constrain this even more. And we're $37 trillion in debt. We need to be thinking in new paradigms. And I think that the president has a mandate to take action using his constitutional authority as the chief executive of Article 2, and also statutory powers to take aggressive actions to start cutting into woke and weaponized government because of, one, what it is doing to the American people, but also, two, the amount of debt that is being added and the spiraling problem that we face if we don't get on top of this. So I think for a variety of reasons, President Trump has a mandate and is empowered to use his full authorities, constitutional and statutory, to move on to pocket rescissions, impoundment, reprogramming authorities, to do whatever he can in the absence of action by Congress. And that's what's happening here. Yes, we got the one big, beautiful bill passed, but beyond that, there doesn't seem to be any sense of urgency about the larger looming trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars and new debt that will continue to accrue on top of the already massive $37 trillion in debt that we have currently.
Wade, according to reporting, it's not certain whether Senate Republicans have the minimum 51 votes that they need to advance the DOGE cuts, codifying the DOGE cuts package. And on the programs you mentioned, like USAID, NPR, PBS, that's in part attributed to Politico. The deadline is Friday. Is this not a dicey prospect to push this rescission package? Because if it does fail, if you don't get the 51 votes, then it's DOA. You can't go into a pocket rescission.
Well, this was some of the danger of many well-intentioned people in our movement demanding DOGE cuts and cuts right away. I don't think that they fully understood that pressure was not necessarily helpful. So I think that the White House, in good faith, wanting to address the desires of some members of Congress who also didn't understand this process fully, and the desires of many in the MAGA movement to move these things forward, I think that there would have been a preference to just hold back and do all of this later through a process that they know that they could have pushed through. But nevertheless, this is where we are, and this is the current reality we're in. So this rescissions package does need to be supported. It does need to pass into law, and Congress needs to vote for it and get it done. There is a Friday deadline. That's when this needs to be done by, or else the whole package fails. So the Senate does need to vote for this. They need to get it done. If it takes getting a deal, we'll have to assess what's in that deal. But they need to get done as much of this, if not all of this, as possible, because on the back end, we cannot just simply use a pocket rescission. However, if Congress fails to get this done, I think that will further justify the use of executive authorities and powers that are granted in statute and or through the constitutional provisions for the president to act to cut spending and reduce waste, fraud, and abuse where possible.
Trying to stop a pocket rescission at all costs. Take a listen to what Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries said recently.
I think there's going to be strong Democratic opposition here in the House. We're going to work hard to kill the legislation here in the House of Representatives. This rescissions bill, which is, doing Elon Musk's bidding in terms of devastating cuts to our ability as a country to protect our national security interests all across the world, and then at the same time assaulting, Bert, Ernie, Big Bird, Elmo, and all of the people connected to Sesame Street. That's extraordinary. I mean, who are these people?
Of course, those are
he invokes
asinine arguments, but yes. Yeah. I mean, Sesame Street's not going away. USAID has been a slush fund to fund woke and weaponize things against the wishes of our allies, pushing LGBTQ issues, pushing wokeness, pushing all sorts of trans ideology in foreign countries who don't want that. So this argument that cutting that is somehow going to harm our national security is also just absolutely nonsensical. Of course, everyone by now probably knows that USAID was the hub, the center of a lot of the censorship industrial complex that was being built out against the American people. It's just a conduit for neocons to push their leftist agenda in the United States on the American people. And so this should not be controversial. This should be an easy layup for anyone who has an R in front of their name. And frankly, a lot of moderate Democrats who proclaim that they're not crazy left woke liberals. This should be a layup. And the fact that we're having a little bit of difficulty getting this across the finish line shows you how paralyzed Congress is in terms of taking our debt and deficit serious, and also taking the notion of woke and weaponized government as serious. And I'll tell you, a lot of people who have an R in front of their name that exist in Washington, D.C. still do not think that woke and weaponized is a real thing. They're completely, they have no idea what time it is right now. And this is why we're running into issues. There needs to be a remaking of the Republican Party. That work needs to continue. Because until then, we're going to continue to spiral into $37 trillion of debt, and with a lot of ours not taking this problem seriously at all.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, especially in the Senate. Many of those so-called Republicans are pretty much indistinguishable in policies from some of the not so crazy Democrats, but definitely not in line with conservative voters, and particularly not with what we call the MAGA base. Final question real quick. What does the White House do to whip the vote? What are they going to have to give up or give to these, so-called Republicans who are holding out at the moment to get this across the line?
Yeah, I think there's probably, I'm guessing, ongoing talks about, what can be done on the back end to ensure that the things that they want funded that might have some value are getting funded. And I think that those whip efforts are probably ongoing, and pointing out to them that, this specific cut to a program that they think that is good, it won't impact the part of that program that they think is good. There might be some discussions on what this looks like later in the year in terms of government funding, some trade-offs there. Those negotiations are ongoing. I'm sure that the White House is doing their best in good faith to work with these members to get a deal made. But at the end of the day, as much of this rescissions package as possible needs to be passed into law. Congress needs to do its job and get the job done.
Yep, lots of horse trading, I imagine, going on the Hill today. Also, the Republican conference is making themselves available to the media to celebrate the BBB, but I hope they get asked some important questions about actually codifying these DOGE cuts. Hopefully our own Allison Steinberg will be in there to ask those questions. We will watch. The deadline is Friday, Wade, and there's a lot on the line for the president's platform, his agenda, so much on the line, and for the American people. Thank you so much, Wade Miller with the Center for Renewing America. You help us understand it so easily. it makes the Republicans look bad when you explain how easy it is and why, they're still holding out. Thank you, Wade.
Thanks for having me on.
The corruption in our refugee program here in America is manifesting itself in serious ways, particularly in Fairfax County. We talk with an HHS whistleblower after the break about a recent event that happened in Northern Virginia.
Whether it's being a weekend warrior or spending time with your family, feeling your best is the key to doing the things you love. That's why I'm excited to tell you about Nirvanta. It's a natural solution designed to help you stay active and live well naturally. Nirvanta is a topical blend of all natural essential oils like frankincense, myrrh, and a proprietary gold standard plant stock extract. It's perfect for your hands, feet, knees, back, or anywhere else that needs a little extra care. Use Nirvanta proactively as part of your daily maintenance routine, and you're guaranteed you're going to feel the difference. Simply massage Nirvanta in for at least 60 seconds, 2 to 3 times a day to get the best results. And if you're not completely satisfied, you get your money back. No questions asked. There's simply no risk and no reason not to try Nirvanta today. Right now, you get 15% off with code Lindell exclusively at nirvantahealth.com. So stop reaching out for that medicine cabinet. Get Nirvanta instead and experience the difference. Go to nirvantahealth.com. Use code Lindell to get 15% off today. Nirvanta Health. Live well naturally.
So why are you trying to kill me?
I'm not trying to kill you,
No, you are. I'm already died. I don't give a
The
fuck.
subject's armed, refusing to give ID. Don't reach for anything,
No,
dude. Don't unbuckle that.
I'm telling you, don't reach. I'm telling you, don't reach. I don't
Subject
give a
keeps
damn.
reaching.
I don't give a damn. If you do anything, don't do anything.
Subject keeps reaching for his weapon.
No, I'm not. I'm not reaching.
That event occurred in Fairfax County, Virginia at the end of May. It occurred when a Fairfax County police officer, himself a veteran of the Afghanistan war, pulled over an Afghan refugee who claimed he hated America for betraying Afghanistan and proceeded to tell the officer about how he couldn't get a job or afford to live in America. Now, if you look at the way the Afghan refugee held his gun, it was in the style of how U.S. armed forces are trained, or they trained Afghan forces to control their weapons in close quarter combat. In other words, this refugee nearly killed a police officer in Virginia because of how we trained him to kill people. The refugee is now dead. The Virginia cop survived his injuries. But my next guest, Aaron Stevenson, a Department of Homeland Security whistleblower who tried warning the public about corruption in America's refugee program, says that the entire enterprise to send tax dollars to support the Afghans throughout America's 20-year war there was a sham and rife with corruption. And he's not the only one saying that. Here's one congressionally appointed investigator explaining how the corruption reached epic levels under so-called President Joe Biden.
The major difference was really with the Biden administration, because we had problems with the Biden administration on getting information from the State Department and USAID. I would have to say that they were the worst. I mean, we spent almost a year and a half trying to get information about what we were doing in Afghanistan. And we were doing it not for ourselves, we were doing it because Congress wanted that information. And it's the State Department's position was the it was the worst position I'd ever seen on sharing information with a congressionally mandated request and with an inspector general.
And that whistleblower from the Department of Homeland Security, Aaron Stevenson, joins us now. Aaron, thank you for joining us to talk about what's a very important issue. We actually see a lot of coverage related to that incident. There was some, it did get attention on social media. I'm honestly surprised, Aaron, given what I know about how the refugee program went, how unorganized that the flooding refugees from Afghanistan with the withdrawal was I heard stories from even Uber drivers in DC talking about the kind of things that were going on at Quantico, where the Afghan refugees were being held. It would make your stomach turn. I'm surprised we haven't seen more incidents like that event in Fairfax County in May, aren't you?
No. Yes and no. What I think is underreported is still the lasting damaging effect that these people put on Americans every single day. I don't think the threshold should be like, well, do they shoot at a cop or not? Is a good guy, bad guy? I think the threshold should be, are they making American lives worse or better? And they're making them worse. If our culture is getting eroded, if we hate standing behind them in the airport, it's getting eroded. I was on a flight, and I'm saying this too from a perspective of, when I was in Iraq, when I was in Afghanistan, I wasn't just like sitting in on the fob, whatever. I went out a lot, what we call, outside the wire. And, it's just, there's a palpable and a like using your senses understanding of these two cultures don't mix. And I just think America needs to start saying some of these things because they do not mix. And I think the damage they do every day to American lives is hard to quantify, because it's things like, being upset because you have to listen to some guy yell on his cell phone, while standing in line at the groceries. That's not okay with me. I don't want some foreigner, like literally can't control the sound of his voice and just disrupting daily lives. I don't like them walking on soccer fields. And this happened, by the way, when I used to coach soccer in Northern Virginia. You'd see Afghans walking around in their Afghan clothing, just like walking across soccer fields. We had to stop the game for our kids just so we could like safely remove these guys who didn't care about the way we live and anything like that. So I'm saying that, by the way, again, with a sense of truly American patriotism and understanding the differences between Americans and Afghans. That's why there's an Afghanistan and an America. So I want to make sure that that's kind of like my sentiment there and my threshold of what's allowable or not. And I don't think not shooting at a cop is, the metric we should be using for good guys, bad guys.
Well, there's also the changes. You got to remember that a lot of them, their children came into the school system. I'm in an area where they transplanted a lot of the Afghan refugees too, because of an NGO that's here that got money to help them settle in the community that I'm in. So I see a lot of what you're talking about. I pass them walking to school in their full dress. And the assimilation is not what particularly the Biden regime would try to tell Americans it is, right? That they come here and they easily assimilate. And it's changed the culture at the schools. I hear so many complaints. My children are in private schools, but I hear so many complaints from actually probably liberal voters in my community complaining about how they're not going to be able to keep their children, particularly in the high schools, with kind of the problems that are rampant, not just from the the refugee program, but also the mass migration. We also got a flood of migrants from the border here, and the schools are completely different than they were 10 years ago. And we pay 100%. A lot of property taxes here. Very high.
This is what I mean. And this is what I mean. Like, it's not just a national security and a public safety issue, which both those things exist very, very prominently. But it's things like this, like, and this is where I struggle with it, because I don't want to have to make the American people every single day have politics in their lives. I don't think it's up to the American citizens, the American family, to have to, organize and go in the streets and then do this and then do that and then go, petition our Congress for change. No, I think we voted for change already. I think we already went out there and did the thing. That was called November 2024. And I want these people out of our country, right? I'm not going to lie to you about that. And I'm seeing some good things, for example, ending the TPS of Afghans. But it's like, that's 12,000 people, over 88,000 enter this country. That's not good enough. You know what I mean? And there are national security concerns up and down this thing. And this is what I kind of have a problem with this, of what I blew the whistle on. The Department of Defense was taking, I don't even know how many thousands of these Afghan interpreters. They were taking them off their own internal watch list as they were entering the country, because now they have a problem with screening of allowing them in or not. I saw them take people off the terrorism watch list and then bring them in the country. Like, you can't argue with some of these things, because it demonstrates by itself that, and this is why I call it the U.S. immigration enterprise, because it's not just DHS. the immigration enterprise as a whole, it's State Department, DOJ, and DHS. They all are huge players in their own things. DHS, of course, is probably the biggest one, but it's incapable of delivering the thing that Americans want it to do. Like the current trajectory, it's just, it can't handle it because they are so aligned against the president. They are very open about this at work. I used to work at USCIS. Like, I know what I'm talking about. I still have friends at USCIS and DHS, and I know they're circumventing policies, even when it comes to just gangs in this country. So the inability for the immigration enterprise to calculate and identify anti-American sentiment, it demonstrates the need to make just wholesale change. Get these people out of our country, and quickly, because they are eroding the quality of life for Americans, and that's not okay. People say all the time, and I will say this too with kind of like my own like bent perspective, my own bias, my own lived experience, if you will, is I'll hear people tell me like, oh, go outside and touch grass, it's not that bad. When's the last time you went to a major city? Like, because you can walk around major cities, touch grass there, and there's some pretty big problems every single day. I don't like going to
Virginia, where I used to live, Arlington, Virginia, and Northern Virginia, right outside DC, where I used to live. I was up there last month. It looks like a completely different place. I mean, it's kind of getting a little, Minneapolis, like you feel like you've been dropped into a different country.
And I think that should then be the calculation now. So what does this change actually deliver? Well, let's look at New York City and Minneapolis. There's two candidates now, I believe. One's definitely going to probably win, which is Zoran. And this other guy, the Somali nationalist in Minneapolis, who's openly declaring and advocating, like, no, yeah, I do these things for the benefit of my people. Those people are Somalis. And I've seen this is becoming a conversation now, but it's only a conversation of like a certain age demographic, like age 49 and below. And even that's kind of like a gray area, 45 to 49. Below, we are now identifying it as what they are. This is called blood and soil nationalism. This mayor, and I don't even know his name, this mayoral candidate in Minneapolis, he's openly advocating all these things for the benefit of his people. And we sit there and look at this like, oh, well, maybe there's a problem with assimilation. No, guys, like there's never going to be assimilation. Yeah, when we change the state flag to basically mirror that of Somalia, we have problems that we have to start addressing quickly. This is not going to happen. This idea of, non-Western civilization is going to be able to assimilate into Western civilization. That's a problem. They don't understand Westphalian government. They don't try to seek it. And we're hitting these things where it's like, if you weren't around for the Enlightenment, maybe you are incapable of grabbing onto the tenets of the Enlightenment. So I know I kind of rant about this every now and then, and I'm getting a little bit more edgy in my own Twitter post. But this is what it is. It's blood and soil nationalism. It's not going to change. And they're openly even stating things like, we're going to make our cities a Trump-free area. That's why I say blood and soil nationalism. They are creating their area for their own people. Welcome to the world is 2025, and that's what we're dealing with. And I don't like the idea of, this, they're confirmed criminals. No, they're anti-American to begin with.
Yeah. And look, you served in Afghanistan. You understand that there were very significant cultural differences, and something we haven't really talked about on this show, but Lara Logan has highlighted a lot is the Bocce Boy problem, where it's normalized pedophilia. And I had heard from Uber drivers that there was a lot of attacks on children going on in these holding areas for these refugees as they were brought in, particularly in Quantico. And he was an Afghan refugee, and he said, we cannot bring these people in. And he was an Afghan refugee, the one Uber driver. He said, we've been working as translators down there, and he said, it's awful what is going on. So you understand the cultural differences. Real quick, last question to sum it up. I know a lot of people or at least a couple of people who made a lot of money from the government bringing these people in under the basis of like they were translators, interpreters, but I mean they got very wealthy during the aftermath of the Afghan withdrawal. That was the Biden regime. What do you make of President Trump's DHS policies at the moment? You're still a whistleblower who is not back on the inside.
Yeah. So the majority of DHS employees, and I'm talking about employees like feds. No, they're still going to do what they're going to do. Again, I have contacts still inside of DHS, and they tell me, for example, one requirement from President Trump was correcting the way that they keep records on gang reporting and gang information. And quote, they are openly not doing that. They're just not doing it. This is the same thing that I saw in 2017 when elements of the Trump administration went down to certain asylum offices and required, like, hey, we're making changes to the asylum program, to the refugee program. We want X, Y, Z done, okay? And then in the course of the meeting with these officials, the asylum people, the refugee people, oh, yeah, of course, cool. We're going to do it, totally do it. They leave the room and they say, we're not changing anything we're doing, guys. There is a problem that extends beyond policy, and it's called personnel. DOJ did not clear out the personnel. And again, I'm saying this from a perspective of we're burning daylight. I do not live under the assumption that, well, there's 3.5 years left. We do not know that, because I believe 2020 was a year under President Trump, which he was not able to govern due to what they did. So I don't operate on the idea of this is our end line. I operate on the idea of we're living right now today. And
that's a good point.
yeah, I will say straight
We're
up,
not far from the midterms. And if
Yeah,
Trump,
but the
if they take to the House, he'll be impeached, and then he will not be able to govern again. We're in a crucial moment.
Right. Yeah, and the personnel at DHS, they are not going to ever do what President Trump wants them to do. There has to be wholesale change. You have to go in and identify not just financial fraud. You have to look for political sentiment, which is being pushed in their daily work. You can find that. It's measurable. They have communications. They have social media. Like, we can do a lot of things, and I think we should be doing them. But again, I'm kind of aggressive, but I think aggression is going to be the only way you win, because that's how you win, is being aggressive.
Well, you know what? That's what we think here at The Absolute Truth as well. Here, here. It's good to see you, Aaron Stevenson, DHS whistleblower. Thanks for joining us. We'll check back in with you soon.
As always, thank you.
The Gaines couple that is so known for their shiplap and flipping houses is the subject of our Weekend Woke with William Wolf after the break.
With everybody talking about making America healthy again, I thought today'd be a great day to talk to all my fellow patriots about the importance of making your homes healthy again. Well, we have proudly partnered with airwaterhealing.com and their revolutionary whole home air purification system. The V3 from Air Water Healing does 3,000 square feet of purification. It eliminates dust, mold, viruses, and odors. But here's the part I love. They require no filters to ever be changed and virtually no maintenance. Whether you suffer from asthma, allergies, seasonal bronchitis, or just want to protect your family from the flu or even greater threats, don't wait to get your V3 from airwaterhealing.com today. Use code Lindell for 20% off in savings and free shipping. That's promo code Lindell at airwaterhealing.com.
Remember Joanna and Chip Gaines? They're the home remodeling duo superstars who got famous in part because they were a deeply Christian couple in reality television, or so we thought anyway. Well, it turns out they're the latest celebrities to get rich and famous partly off the Christian community, only to go full woke the longer they stay famous and rich. Yep, sorry to disappoint, but Chip and Joanna Gaines have embraced the homosexual agenda in defiance of all biblical teachings so they can secure a new TV deal with super gay HBO. Their new show opens with some lovely background scenes of rolling hills, wheat fields, and of course, an obnoxiously gay married couple, and their two small boys looking to renovate their mansion. Everything about this is absolutely wrong. That it is being promoted by a couple who made their careers centered around their Christianity. God bless them to be successful. It's just another reminder, Conquest Second Law, which reads, any organization not explicitly right-wing sooner or later becomes left-wing. We'd like to add the Emerald Corollary to Conquest Law, which states, quote, any Christian organization that values worldly fame and fortune more than God's glory will ultimately become heretical. And that's what Chip and Joanna have done. They've allowed themselves and their brand, Magnolia, to embrace heresy. Now joined by William Wolf. He's a former Pentagon official from Trump's first term. He's the current executive director of the Center for Baptist Leadership. Oh, well, I didn't like shiplap anyway, William, but were you surprised by? I'm really not that surprised by Chip and Joanna giving in to this degree, because I could tell over the years they wanted to play it very safe, right? They were on the Today Show and everything was very safe, while supposedly, you know, honoring their Christianity. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think you're right. It's not ultimately that surprising, particularly when you start pulling the threads and you find the slow and steady yet sure signs of compromise along the way. Megan Basham did an excellent job reporting on some of the background here. Two very interesting points. One is that this couple, so-called, you know, gay married couple on the show, are two men who are not just, you know, men who happen to be, you know, pretending to be married. They are committed LGBT activists, two guys who went to Washington, D.C., you know, to get married there because they couldn't get married in Texas, and then advocated for, you know, same-sex marriage laws. And then even worse, they're saying these boys are adopted, but they were purchased via surrogacy. So not only are they platforming, you know, a so-called gay married couple, but a gay married couple who essentially bought kids as a commodity stolen from the womb of another woman who rented it out to them. And then the second thing that's honestly even worse than this is that Chip and Joanna Gaines' photographer, this guy named Jack Bronner, was a man who was married with children, who then decided he was gay, and then invited his new gay lover into his house with his wife and children. And now they live in some sort of weird, disgusting throuple arrangement. And there's a post on Instagram where this gay guy is sharing about his new throuple life. And you have Chip Gaines underneath it saying, "You're so good. Thank you for it." We also saw them praising Beth Moore, which is always a sign of decline. I saw you put that up there. But so the signs were there, and now it's obvious. We have gone from, you know, shiplap and Gomorrah, you know, Sodom and Gomorrah to shiplap and Gomorrah.
You know what? The moment I saw them, you know, posting about Beth Moore, that was just it. That discredits anyone for me. I remember all those, you know, these women in church used to get together with their Beth Moore book clubs, and I never really, you know, even back then, this is like 20 years ago, I didn't care much for her books. And then I understood why as she revealed herself through the Trump years. Look, another aspect of this that many people are pointing out that I immediately noticed, and it reminded me of a case in Georgia with LGBTQ plus activists, two men who were married and adopted their boys. This is a situation of surrogacy, as you noted, which in itself is so problematic. We talked about that on this show. I made David Rubin really upset with that. But it's noticeable that these male gay couples most often choose to do twin boys, like, you know, Pete Buttigieg, Dave Rubin. They don't really want to have little girl children, it seems.
Yeah, that's something that other people have noted too, is this sort of I don't know, you could call it a coincidence if you believe in coincidences. It's odd that you see these gay men frequently choosing young boys. Have also been, you know, some horrific stories that have broken about the abuse that young boys have suffered at the hands of their married gay parents before. You know, but back to Chip and Joanna, I just want to say, obviously what's at root here is they've decided that compromise with the world is more profitable than obedience to God. You know, they think that they can finally cash in on the cachet that they built with the Christian community at no cost by continuing to embrace and normalize this destructive, quite frankly, perverted, and of course, sinful agenda. And one other thing I want to point out too is that it's actually just very lame to bend the knee to the rainbow jihadists in 2025, 10 years after Obergefell. Support for so-called same-sex marriage is really at the lowest it's ever been amongst Republicans. It's certainly at the lowest it's ever been in the next generation. The love is love mantra no longer holds the mystical spell that it used to hold. People are more aware now how destructive this lifestyle is, and to sell out now when it's easier than ever to stand against it is honestly just pathetic.
It's sad. It's actually really sad. And it just, everybody, you and I both know, because on a much smaller scale, we face similar tests. If you're in the media world in any capacity, you are ultimately going to be put to this test, and you have to make a choice. And there are consequences either way. I'm sad they made the wrong choice, but I'm not surprised. I mean, I've faced choices, right? I've been canceled for, telling the truth, but I also have been asked to endorse anti-biblical beliefs in the past to get ahead. And you just have to choose not to. So it is what it is. Now, there are other news, and I want to get to as we have 1 minute. We just have 1 minute, William, but I can't go without mentioning this. And that is John MacArthur took a baby face, it did die. That's a storyline. We got 20 seconds. Just your comments on that.
John MacArthur was a lion of the faith who finished well in a day and age of compromise. So in a world full of Chip and Joanna Gaines, be a John MacArthur. May God bless his legacy.
And that's the absolute truth. That's it for us in this hour. Thank you so much, William Wolf, for sticking around to the end. I'll see you back at noon tomorrow.
Friends, we all know the truth. Big Pharma and the federal bureaucracy have made a mess of healthcare in this country, and boy, that's an understatement. President Trump signed an executive order to bring prices down, and that's a great step. But we know that real change takes time. There's one pharmacy that is already stepping up. I want to tell you about All Family Pharmacy. They're not waiting. They're taking action now with a summer sale that gives you the power to take control of your health. Right now, through the end of June, you get 20% off site-wide, no insurance required. Did you hear that? 20% off site-wide, no insurance required. They work with licensed doctors in all 50 states, and they ship fast straight to your door. Whether it's ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, methylene blue, antibiotics, emergency kits, or your daily prescriptions, this is a time to stock up. If you believe in medical freedom, if you're tired of waiting for someone else to fix things, do what I do. Take action. Go to allfamilypharmacy.com/Lindell and use promo code Lindell20, Lindell 20 for 20% off your entire order. That's allfamilypharmacy.com, Lindell. Promo code Lindell20. Let's protect our families, defend our freedom, and make America healthy again together.
With everybody talking about making America healthy again, I thought today'd be a great day to talk to all my fellow patriots about the importance of making your homes healthy again. Well, we have proudly partnered with airwaterhealing.com and their revolutionary whole home air purification system. The V3 from Airwater Healing does 3,000 square feet of purification. It eliminates dust, mold, viruses, and odors. But here's the part I love. They require no filters to ever be changed and virtually no maintenance. Whether you suffer from asthma, allergies, seasonal bronchitis, or just want to protect your family from the flu or even greater threats, don't wait to get your V3 from airwaterhealing.com today. Use code Lindell for 20% off in savings and free shipping. That's promo code Lindell at airwaterhealing.com. Have you ever wondered what happened to the legendary Chuck Norris? Well, I recently saw a video he made and I was shocked. That guy's amazing and he's staying active well into his 80s. What's even more shocking is he's stronger, can work out longer, and even has plenty of energy left over for his grandkids. He did this by just making one change. He says he still feels like he's in his 50s. His wife even started doing this one thing too, and she's never felt better. She says she feels 10 years younger, her body looks leaner, and she has energy all day. Chuck made a very special video that explains everything. Make sure you watch it by going to chuckdefense.com. chuckdefense.com/Lindell. It will change the way you think about your health. Once again, that's chuckdefense.com/Lindell. You won't believe how simple it is.